my name is Peter, and I'm an undergrad researcher here for this summer. And we'll be going over how to segment DICOM files for radiomics. And so we'll start from the beginning on, where to download the folder, DICOM folder, and which one to use. And so for, whatever patient cohort you're segmenting, you should have a DICOMS file folder that you have all of them saved in. And so here you can see that we have it under lung cancer radiomics, DICOM files 2, and then we'll just use the first one as an example. So just download it off of, OneDrive. So we're using patient 1 right now, and we're only using baseline CT as of now, pre-treatment scan for the patient. And then you'll click this folder, and then you'll come here. And so when the CDs, the DICOM files were burned onto the CDs, all of the scans kind of got spliced up into different folders. So this folder might be, coronal view, this could be axial, and so forth. And so we have already, for this patient cohort, labeled which scan has the highest resolution in the axial focused view. And so you want to download that one, whichever one that is. So it could be trial and error. So after you download it, right, simple download, it should pop up in your downloads. So yeah, as you can see, 5954, cool. And so sometimes these folders download compressed, and so you have to unzip it by exploring. Other times you can just double click and it'll go, but I like to it takes 1 more second. So just right click and then click explore, and then get all these files, and you simply just drag it over here to the images part of LifeX. And it takes a second or 2 to load as well, so don't worry if that does. So as the image is loading, we can go over what we are going to segment. And so you should have an Excel sheet with all the clinical data on it. And so for us, we organized it obviously here is the study ID, de-identified study ID. So patient 1 has 3 lesions. For now, we're just going to focus on segmenting the primary lung lesion. And so this patient has a right upper lobe mass. Oh, sorry, wrong tab. There we go. So yeah, this patient has a right upper lobe mass. And as you can see on the pre-treatment date, the baseline CT, it's 46 millimeters. And so we're looking for something. And so as you can see, this cap W, it's a fine DICOM folder to use. Anything cap, chest, abdomen, if it says axial MPS, like all those should be fine. As you can see, the resolution's pretty nice. So here is the right upper lobe lesion. And so, cool. So we have the right view. We're segmenting in the axial view. If you press layout over here, you click other, and just press the axial view. You can use the other views to kind of correlate and locate where the tumor is. And so, for example, if I was not confident that this was a lesion, then I would drag this crosshair, and you can drag it simply just by clicking anywhere along the X or Y axis or the middle. And as you can see in the sagittal and coronal view, it correlates exactly to where you're dragging it. And so if this was very unclear, let's say it looked pretty synonymous with the soft tissue adjacent to it, then I could go to the coronal view and see, oh, okay, very clear that it is a lesion in the right upper region. And so that's kind of a tip. So I'll go back to the axial view right now. And so from here, we are going to start segmenting the lesion. And so how to zoom into an image is you press Control and then you scroll up. Scrolling down will zoom you out. And then Control left click is how you drag yourself through the image. And then if you press Control and you slide your mouse, then it will shift whatever segmentations you've done to the next slide. And so sliding left will do something, sliding right will shift it the other direction. So that's pretty important when we start segmenting, because sometimes you'll press control, zoom out, and then move your mouse, and that'll shift all of your segmentations. And so you don't have to redo it. You just need to shift it back by, control and then swiping your mouse. So now segmenting this lesion, we're going to press over here in the ROI section. This is the ROI side. This is the image side. So ROI, click new. If new isn't popping up here, you can always press other, and you have all these options like new, load, etc. So yeah, we're going to press new, and then we're going to get this new ROI. It's not really important that you rename this right now, just because you're going to run it through N anyways. But I'll rename it. So double click this area, and we're going to name it T1, tumor 1. And so shift and left click is going to color the lesion, and then shift and right click is going to erase. And then shift scroll up is going to increase the ROI coloring region, and then shift scrolling down is going to minimize it. And so what we want to do is, since this is a pretty easy case, because around its whole perimeter is just empty airspace, lung space, and so we can pretty easily segment through all of this. Oh yes, I forgot, put it to 2D.
About the 2D and the 3D. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. And so you want to do 2D, just because, as you can see with 3D, I don't really think you're cutting work, because you have to go in and erase all of the areas like I'm doing right now and recolor some of them. So yeah, we're going to carefully color in as much tumor possible, and you don't have to worry. So the only margin you have to worry about is when it is adjacent to the chest wall or any type of soft tissue. If it's adjacent to lung space, then this function that we'll use pretty soon, called N, the N threshold, is going to cut out all of this excess segmenting that I did, just because empty airspace density is a lot different than tumor density. And so we'll get to that in a second. So I'm just going to do this roughly for time's sake. So it's pretty clear. If the margin is unclear for the tumor, let's say this looked pretty similar to this in terms of shade or gradient, I guess, then you can change the brightness of the scan with this little bar on the side. You don't have to press anything except left click, and so you can drag it to make it appear more apparent to yourself, like here. Another trick or tip, I would say, is while you're segmenting, press Control S, and so that will pixelate the image so that you can see the margins better, and we can get even more accurate data. And so as you can see, like I control slid, and so everything got shifted. And so I'm just going to try to adjust. There we go. Perfect. So there's a bunch of views that you can use for the CT scan. We usually focus on chest, just because lung is helpful to identify the lesion, but when this software extracts texture like radiomic features or texture in general, it's not using the lung view, it's using the chest view. And so if it doesn't appear on the chest view, let's say here I see like a ground glass lesion or whatever it is, and I segment it on lung view, what the machine is going to pick up is in chest view anyway. So if it doesn't appear in chest, then it's just going to exclude everything you segmented. So try using chest, use lung to locate. Fat view is also sometimes helpful as well. So just whatever view helps you locate and identify tumor and tumor lesion best, use it. But then for segmentation, you generally want to stay on chest. And so we are almost done. Okay, so we've pretty much covered all of the tumor. And so now what we'll do is we'll go to handy dandy N over here and threshold, click it, and the range might be different from whenever you segment. So depending on, what your project lead wants to set as your range is what you'll set. But for this project, we did the minimum value for the Hounsfield units to be -50 and the max value to be 300. And so this N threshold filter is going to excise anything outside of this range automatically. And so it'll clean up our segmentation. It'll be pretty cool. So the absolute filter, create a new ROI. So now if we go to our right in our ROI list, we can see that another one has been added with the threshold applied. And so we can erase the old one. And now we can see that all of the margins are pretty as good, as good as it gets. So I'm just gonna reset the color just because dark is kind of hard to see. So click the color icon here. I like lighter gradients. So yeah, this is the tumor segmented. Sometimes you'll run into problems like this border between, the muscle or whatever soft tissue is bordering the tumor. Sometimes the machine is not able to clear out the margins as precisely as we want to. And so another way to do that is click this arrow icon here, and you'll get all of these, data, whatever. You don't have to look at that. If you slide the blending scale, you can see that I can make the color lighter so that I can see through it clear. It'll be a lot more translucent. And so that just makes it easier for us to determine margin after we've colored it, just to double check. Another, couple of features, our arrow icon will take you immediately to wherever you segment the tumor, and then ROI, if you press on or off, it'll turn it on and off. So now that we have segmented the primary lung lesion, I'll rename this T1 because organization is key to this project. Now you'll attach the peritumoral ring to it. So you're going to go here. Sometimes it already has a ring, but if it doesn't have it here, you can press other again, and you will click ring here and edit or reformat. So the peritumoral ring space we set it to a 10 millimeter diameter around the tumor, and then make sure to click create a new ROI. If it's keep the same ROI, it's just going to expand whatever you segmented as the lesion. So you're going to lose all your work, and then you run it. And so now it automatically gives you the peritoneal space around it. However, as you can obviously see, it includes bone, chest wall, etc., vessels. So we want to exclude that. So sometimes it glitches and the color doesn't come up, so you have to press a couple of buttons and bang. Okay. So we traditionally set the peritoneal ring to yellow. We set it to yellow because that was just the color that is the easiest to see the contrast between, when it's covering lung parenchyma, it's pretty dark, prominent yellow, whereas if it touches literally anything else, it turns into this light yellow. And so it's really easy to see the margin and what you want to segment and what you don't. So we don't even have to rename this right now. Automatically after applying, we're going to run it through N. So the range for this really is, we're tracking for only lung parenchyma. And so air is really, really not dense. So we'll set it to like -1000, and then we'll set the max to -50, so that the border between the ring and the tumor is as close as we can get it. -50. Create a new ROI. Delete the old ROI. So yeah, now you can see most of the bone has been excluded because bone is very dense. It's going to be on 1000 usually. But as you can see here, some of the airspace or some of the soft tissue is still included, which we don't want. We just want lung parenchyma. And so what you'll do is now rename this to R1, right? Ring 1 is going to correlate to tumor 1. Very important when you have multiple intrathoracic lesions in the patient. We're going to set the yellow to a lighter color again, just to see the contrast better. And so, yeah, I don't like this shape. So yeah, all of this excess stuff that is not lung parenchyma, you want to go in and manually erase. And so I'll do that real quick. Sweet. So now margins are pretty perfect. The ring completely borders the lesion, best case scenario. And we have pretty accurate segmentation. Now, what you want to do is to save your work. First, you want to set up where you want to save it. And so you go to settings here on the bottom left. And in settings, you'll go to common. And then you should make a desktop folder for yourself. And so you can see here, I made a desktop folder, Peter, and that's where I'll keep all of my segmentations. And so make a desktop folder, go to settings, go to common, and then you want to set it up so that it goes directly to your folder. So whatever you named your folder, replace my name or whoever's name in there with yours. And it should automatically save to that area. So now that it's set up like that, we're going to go over here to file and edit, and we're going to save. Now there's multiple save options depending on what computer you're using. We're all using LifeX version 7.3.0. However, for some reason, there's variability in what shows up in the save section. And so if yours looks like mine, where it just has one option for save S, you're going to click save S. If yours has other options like save S16 or save S8, those numbers just simply mean what bit the image is saved in. And so we definitely want to save it into a 16-bit image, just because 8-bit imaging only has, I think, around a million, like millions of colors. And 16-bit is trillions of colors, so way more data, quantitative data. And so you'll click Save As. These already exist for me. So, let's just pretend that it's going to run through. And after it saves, you're going to see a green check mark saying saved, successfully. Once you see that it's been saved successfully, the ROIs, your work that you just did, now we're going to extract the quantitative data. And so in the top, you're going to see all of these different icons that are different colors. So you're going to hover over the purple one called texture, and you left click. And here, the settings are preset for me because I've used this computer to segment before, but these are the settings that you want on whatever computer, whatever device you're using for segmentation. We want to standardize slice thickness. And so this is just the voxel volume. We're doing 115, and then we're setting the gray levels to 131, bin size to 10, and then the intensity rescaling. So the absolute bounds in which we're computing for is -1000, right? Including the peritumoral ring space, and then up to 300, which is the highest density, the highest Hounsfield unit we're tracking for tumor. And so -1000 to 300, make sure it's absolute, make sure it's 3D, because if you're doing 2D, then it'll compute in 16 instead of 64 voxels. And then, yeah, you'll run it. And so when you run it, it's going to take a bit of time. And also your segmentations might look very shifted. Don't worry. It'll go back if you just scroll. And so wait a couple seconds when it runs, because sometimes if you click into the Excel sheet too fast, then some of the ROIs haven't finished computing. And so, and if it hasn't finished computing, then you can always close it, delete the Excel file, and run the texture again. And so today is the 27th. So this is the file that I just texturized. We'll open it. And so this is the data that you just collected via segmentation. You can see all of these are radiomic features. And the important thing we're looking for is, okay, did I save it with the right parameters? 131, the voxel size 511, perfect. I want to see if the date is there. It is, excellent. And then T1 and R1, perfect. So you should have a master sheet and where you're collecting this, radiomics data. And so you'll just copy this and paste it over to that sheet. And yeah, other than that, you want to save all of the work you did also on some collaborative OneDrive, so that when there is a mistake, you know where to pinpoint it and how to correct it. And so as you can see, this is my desktop folder, and it'll automatically open it after you run the texture. And you should have these three folders: raw volume, ROI value, ROI volume. Texture session, you really don't need to worry about. So the ROI volume is where all of the ROIs you've saved are going to be located. And so let's say I accidentally delete this, or my work didn't save, or whatever the case is. If you've saved your ROIs previously, you can just drag these files to the ROI section and it'll upload, and it'll take a second or two maybe. But yeah, it'll upload the ROIs onto your scan. And then the ROI value is where the radiomics features are going to be. And so, yes, that is pretty much all you need to know. For if you do segment lymph nodes, you cannot use N. You cannot use N because the surrounding soft tissue and all of that, it's just the machine isn't going to be able to know what is tumor or what is lymph node and what is not. And so, yeah, you want to use just manual segmentation. And what can help is the histogram. So if you can click it here, or you can click it over here. When you click other, under save, histogram right here. And so when you open the histogram, this is kind of the graph for the Hounsfield units. You can see all the different intensities that we just segmented. And because we're talking about lymph nodes, I'll just close everything else. So you can close whatever intensity you don't want to see by simply shutting the eye. So click on it and it'll shut it down. So let me do that real quick. Perfect. So again, lymph node density is pretty in a pretty tight range. Really, it shouldn't go past -50 and past 100 maybe even. And so you'll kind of see similar trends in the histogram when you're segmenting lymph nodes. And so you can kind of track it live time to see if you're segmenting something that's not lymph node. So if I were to, let's say, select this ROI lymph node to axillary lymph node number 2, and I segment something like right here that's not lymph node, or I touch something that's not lymph node, if you see the histogram, it updates live time, so you can see that, oh, like a portion of the voxels are not lymph node. And so you go back, you erase, and as you can see, it's pretty again. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Other things you can manually measure the distance if you want to see if this lesion is the lesion tracked on your Excel sheet. And so, you just simply click distance and then you drag the endpoints, see, and measure diameter. Other than that, I think that's pretty much all you need to know. Control. So yeah.
Just in case we fail to locate any lesion, especially lymph nodes, do we have somebody on the backup, or do we look out for when we have confusion?
Yeah, so there's a lot of confusion, especially when we approach things like the hilum, like right hilar, left hilar region. And also you're going to find on the radiology reports that they're pretty vague, and sometimes the relative location can be very arbitrary. For example, if they say paratracheal, sometimes we found lesions as far down into, the hilar, like this part where, it's it's adjacent to the bronchus or something. And so I think relative location should be emphasized. If there is difficulty in finding these, lesions that are surrounded by soft tissue, or, like you said, lymph nodes that are pretty small, I would hope that there is a a medical professional there to discern what is and isn't the lesion. And if not, if it is too unclear, then I think the right thing to do would be to exclude that patient from the study, because it's very unclear. Sometimes you'll reach cases where there's an artifact, and because of it literally shines like a star or a sun, and so it has like all these lines shooting out of it. If you reach an artifact that kind of obstructs your view of the lesion, or as you're segmenting, you have to, segment it in strips because the artifact is just, going into your lesion, then I would say, again, you would need to exclude that patient. The software needs 64 voxels for it to pull any type of radiomic feature out of it. That is significant enough. So if you go back to the histogram, let's say, I'll just make a new ROI and close all of these. Okay, so I don't need to rename that. So let's say lesion size is this big. It's super small, right? If you go to the histogram, you can see that it doesn't even have multiple of each voxel. It just has one of each voxel right now. So let me try to make it a little bigger than that. Okay. So as you can see, number of voxels, it's going to be your y-axis on the histogram. The highest amount of, one type of voxel is 8. You need this to be 64 if you want any type of texture extraction or whatever you want from it. And so just keep that in mind. Cool. And so, yeah, after you're done, the 3 folders that you have, for organization purposes, you should have a segmentations folder. And so for us, how we did it was segmentation, and then we just had everyone's segmentation here. So I'd go to my segmentation folder, make a folder with the patient ID, and then drag in the 3 folders that you saved.
What about the normal lung, spleen, and
normal lung, spleen? I'm trying to think if he's going to continue with the harmonization model, but we can do that. So for normal lung and spleen, all you're basically doing is segmenting 3 different ranges of tissue. So Dr. Yuri has a paper on harmonization to offset scanner-associated bias. And so to do that, it's a very simple linear regression model that he runs for all of the tissue samples. And so the reason why we're doing 3 separate ranges is to collect a variety, like equivariance of points on the linear regression. The wider, the better. And so the first lung, that you collect might be anywhere from 1 to 3 volume. So here you can see the volume below each ROI. So for L3, the volume is 14 cubic centimeters voxels. And so you want one of the volumes to be pretty small, around the 1 to 3, 1 to 4 range. You want the next one to be around the 4 to 7, 4 to 8 range, and then the third one to be pretty big, like from 9 to 20, 30, 40. Doesn't really matter. You just want a nice variety of sizes across a big range. Maybe the biggest you can go is 50. And so for lung tissue, you just want to segment what visibly looks like to be healthy lung space from the chest view, just because if you go to lung view, you can see different, either vessels, or you can don't segment the bronchus, but like all these different lines and things. But don't worry too much about that, because that'll all get averaged out anyway. And so just use chest view to segment the 3 views. And so there's no blatant vascularities or nodules or anything like that. Should be fine, like here. And then for spleen, again, these should all be, these should all be pretty, the spleen should look pretty homogeneous. Obviously don't segment things with calcifications, or if you do see, any vascularity, don't segment that either. But yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing.
If possible, even when segmenting mass or lymph node, we would still want to, if possible, not segment vascular vessels, right? Great vessels, right?
Right. For lymph nodes, it should be very easy to not, because they're so small, and there's not really any vascularities that you can see on the CT scan anyway. In a lymph node, it looks pretty homogeneous, like it looks like a kidney bean, right? But yeah, for the tumor, the end function will clear out most of it, but you still have to go in and manually check slide by slide to see, okay, did it really exclude all of it? Because since we set the range to -50 to 300, if something is 300.5, then if it's like 300.4, like very close to our margin, then the machine's just going to include it. And so we want to go and manually exclude everything that looks like a blood vessel or whatever, to improve accuracy for our findings. I think that is all. I hope you guys have fun segmenting.